Bring out your pen and paper and get ready because this video we're going to be covering the best talents for each commander for Season T1, and we're going to be covering a lot of variations, so bear with me because this video will be a bit on the longer side. What is up guys, Meower here back with a brand new Call of Dragons video. So this video has been requested ever since Season T1 started and we started seeing the effects or what the effects of the seasonal talents will be, as well as the emergence of so many new pairings and the presence of game-changing talents such as Long Range Warfare or Rebound or even the suppressive fire and so on and so forth. So in this video we're going to be discussing every possible and best option for talents for every single commander for their best pairings. Now, do note some commanders will have some variations, but I will try my best to condense it to two choices at max so you don't get lost with me. So, with that being said, smash the like button, spam the subscribe, and let's get this video started. Starting off, we're going to be starting with one of my favorite commanders, Syndron. His talent has not really changed at all, I would say. It's still the same from last season because, well, Syndrome's whole point is being a glass cannon. And this build enables him to be pretty much just that. We don't need counterattack on Syndrome, and we don't need all conquering because Syndrome rewards good positioning and good microing. So you have these two talents, the 16% March speed that should enable you to properly position yourself and get in range to nuke people and just delete marches left and right, especially with the introduction of the long range warfare talent that now fixes Syndrome's only weakness is that he doesn't get in range sometimes to delete people off the map. So now that that fixes that issue, then Syndrome will probably be also one of the strongest marches in ST1, but that strongest march title will probably go for someone else later on this video. I did mention it as well in the previous video for the best T1 pairings, but still, I digress. Next up, we got Fragar. I've mentioned it a few times. Fragar should not be a primary commander at all, and this tree is an absolute mess, so not recommended using Fragar as primary at all. Unless you're running a flying march, but then even then it will be so weak and so underwhelming that you're just pretty much free to build whatever you want. Honestly, I haven't figured out a proper build. The only build I figured out for her is just a bunch of move speed, so you can get to collecting runes quicker and then just escape or just raid farmers pretty much. That is it. I haven't really figured out a proper build for her. If you do have a proper build for her, please let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I just give up on trying to figure out a build for her in general. She's not a proper primary commander at all. The marksman tree is very underwhelming, and the mobility tree is the worst in the game, so no point of running her as primary when Syndrome exists. Next up, we got Gores. Now, Gores is probably the biggest winner of the season T1 changes, along with the meta changes and every single thing that has changed through the seasonal talents and everything else in between. So, let me explain why that's the case. For the seasonal talents, we have seen a new talent here that says Rebound. When your infantry come under attack from ranged units in the field, they have a 10% chance to reduce damage taken by 20% and deal counterattack damage to their target by 180 skill damage without any cooldown. Now, this also holds a lot of synergy with Goresh's third skill, where Ruthless Goresh Legion launches a counterattack, blah 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 blah. You know what I'm talking about. So the build we're gonna go for is to give him an extra survivability and an extra counterattack oomph, as well as giving him a chance to deal even more counterattack to just stay in the field longer and deal more damage overall from his skill damage and just bulldoze everything and everyone. So this will be the tree I'm gonna be probably running with him. The reason why I'm picking up Heaven's Blessing instead of the Adrenaline Rush is because I'm going to be running him with Skolle, and Skolle has a heal on her 4th skill that I will be awakening, so I might as well make use of that, as well as this rectification as well, giving me an extra survivability that I will need in order to launch even more counterattacks and just delete people more. So this is the build I will be going for. Of course, if you don't know, overall attack, overall speed, health, shield of stability, we go for defense first, skill damage, extra healing, extra defense, we go for all conquering, and then last words, we go for encouraging dance, and then we go for ready for battle instead of iron will, because when infantry get attacked from multiple targets, they rage cycle even quicker, reaching a point that you're just skill cycling every 2 to 3 turns and not really needing the value of iron will. Iron will is only good for 1v1s purely, but on infantry, you're never really going to be properly 1v1ing unless you're just farming merits, and even then, you might as well just get that extra counterattack that could help you launch that skill as well. So a lot of synergy with that. So be sure to pick it up. But then we double dip into the infantry tree because the infantry tree is just the tank tree, but more superior and higher numbers on every single skill. We go for flank protection, one of my favorite talents in general. It gives you near immortalless when you're surrounded by multiple legions as well. And then we go for rectification. We go for march speed, and finally we take the last 2 points into egoism because we can't really decrease hero skill damage by any other option. Next up, Skolle, she's got a somewhat similar build. This is the build I would run on her. If she's a primary, it will be just a bruiser build that just runs up on people and deals damage, but I wouldn't recommend having Skolle as your primary. But should you run her as your primary, I believe this will be the perfect tree for you. You go all in on infantry, you go for adrenaline rush, or you can go for heaven's blessings. Both are perfectly fine. Of course, don't forget encouraging dance. Don't forget the last word and ready for battle as well, so you can double counterattack and make use of that rebound talent. But then you go for the PvP tree, overall attack, overall speed, overall HP, and then finally Army of Valor. Next up, Lilia. Now, Lilia will have two builds this season. All right, there will be the standard build if you do decide to pair her with whatever other commander that has skill damage, and there will be the build that you go if you're gonna be running her with Thea, which I will be doing. For the difference between them, it's going to be Spirit of Rage versus Boiling Blood. Uh, you go for Boiling Blood if you're going to have a casting skill damage deputy with her, such as Velen, Waldir, Alwyn, and the likes. And we go for Spirit of Rage if you're going to be pairing her with Indus or Thea. Personally, I will be running her with Thea, just for the extra shield and the extra attack that will boost her skill damage in general, with so many talent points going into skill damage in general, because most of the damage of Lilia comes from her Scorch and her Rage skill. So these are the two builds I would highly recommend you go for. If you're gonna go for the standard, go for Boiling Blood. If you're gonna go with Thea or Indus, then go for Spirit of Rage, just to rage cast that much faster, as this will be completely worthless. Next up, Nico. Nico has seen a few changes. Since the introduction of the new talent, the counterattack builds will be kind of dead and kind of redundant, so there's no point of you going for counterattack anymore. What instead you should be doing is just sort of treat him like a Syndrome March, like you would build a Syndrome. So the way I'm going to be building my Nico, since I will be picking up the long range warfare talent, especially for fighting, when the fighting starts, of course, I'm going to be going for normal attack, overall speed, overall health. I'm going to be going for arrow position, overall attack, march speed, all conquering, and then of course whirlwind. And then I go for cool under pressure. I go for intrepid. I go for unstoppable, then mark of war. Then I double dip into the precision tree as usual because I absolutely despise the marksman tree. I think it's one of the worst trees in the game. I go for irrepressible and then head held high. I go for force of will, and then the final 2 points will go into suppression. Of course, this tree is purely for pairing him with a Canara. You could also go for Canara primary, but this tree is just for him and Canara. If you're going to be pairing him with Thea, then I would go for this build. If you're not going to be going for the long range warfare and you still want to have that extra 3 March utility from archers, then I would be going with this. But if not, then you should go for this. This also works with Guanwin and any other archer commander. As long as Nico's the primary, you should be fine, just to make use of his defense reduction shred and his little awakening. Next up, Bertrand, or Bertrand for the French people, since he's kind of Frenchy. It's kind of looking like a French commander. Bertrand is an interesting commander, right? Because the way his skill works is that you have two options when you're building Bertrand. If you're going to be using him as primary, then ignore the skill even exists because you're not going to be able to proc it because time will always run out after your deputy casts their skill and then you start your second skill cycle. So, since I will be running him as my primary in my pairing that I will be using, then this skill means nothing to me. And if anything, if it works, then it works. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't affect me by any shape or form. So, since I will be running him with Valen, this is the build I will go for if I'm running him with Valen. I'm going to go for overall attack, overall speed, overall HP, and then I go for mighty power. I go for the skill tree. I go for overall attack, or intimidation, head how high, boiling blood, since it also affects my Velen. I go for detached. I go for focus, crit, and then caged animal, and then I go for the PvP tree instead of the magic tree. And the reason why I go for the PvP tree instead of the magic tree is that Valen already has a magic maelstrom type of ability that he has a 20% defense break. So there is no point of me going for magic maelstrom, and instead I would much rather pick up the extra march speed so I can, run the moment I get hit by normal attacks, so I can make use of having his last skill awakened, as well as getting that extra 3% damage that will scale up immensely, and then extra 5% hero skill damage versus the 4% from the magic tree. So that is pretty much the reason why I go for this build. I think it complements what you want to achieve with Bertrand Valen perfectly. But if you're gonna run Bertrand with Atheist or Thea as a flying march, or even Tohar, though Tohar should be the primary in that build because I will explain the moment we come to visit Tohar's skill. I would just swap Boiling Blood with Spirit of Rage if you're going to be running him with Thea, but if you're going to be running him with Atheist, then Boiling Blood is just fine, just to give Atheist that extra damage that he severely lacks, and having 8 extra damage on his Rage skill, you can never go wrong with that. Or I think it's 80% or 8, I don't know. I don't care. Anyway, you get my point. But yeah, it just gives him the extra march speed, the extra skill damage, and crit on Bertrand is pretty disgusting because the moment he crits, he hits like an absolute he hits like an absolute truck. Next up, we got ourselves Thea. Thea might see some play as a primary here. If you want to run her with Bertrand, then I definitely recommend you go for a page. Where's the page? I didn't even finish it. Oh, I did finish it. I think you should go for this tree if you're going to be running her as your primary. It will be a bit of a tankier build that doesn't really do much in general, but except be absolutely annoying to deal with. Just go for the PvP tree first. You can go for Blessings of Fury, or you can go for Breach Blade. Personally, I prefer Breach Blade just for the extra defense penetration and be able to deal extra damage. And of course, don't forget your Held How High, don't forget your Shelter of Compassion. That also increases Tia's rage skill. And then, just chill there and pretty much do your thing. The overall tree is pretty weak in general. It has less stats than everything else. I don't like it. And honestly, it's absolutely worthless. All these are so bad, they do absolutely nothing. Next up for Valen. So Valen will also have a couple of builds if you want to go for the CC machine, which is one of my favorite ones. That's just pure utility and pure skill damage. You're gonna go for the control tree as your primary and the PvP tree as your secondary because again, you don't need Magic Maelstrom on Valen because of his last skill that already has a defense break built in it that will always override the Magic Maelstrom, so you might as well always, always, always go for the PvP tree when Valen is present in your marches. As well, for Lilia, I'm glad I remember that, if you're going to be running Valen with you, then might as well go for energy boost to have that extra chance to get an extra AoE off and deal more damage overall. And then this tree is kind of experimental. That's just a pure defense shredding with almost no downtime build, but I wouldn't really recommend it. If anything, the CC machine is probably the most optimal Valen build right now. For in this, if you're gonna Wait, I forgot Canara. If you're gonna be going for Canara as your primary, then of course you should always go for her as this build. But if you're going to be picking up the long range warfare, then I would recommend you go for Cyclone Seal over Soul Siphon because you're not going to be relying on counterattack anymore. And if anything, you should be swapping out the counterattack of Last Word into overall attack and just build normally as you usually would instead of, going for Soul Siphon, Last Word. And you should go for Cyclone Seal and overall attack. I think this is the perfect Canara tree in general, gives her everything she needs. Plus, especially when you pair her with Nico, you're going to be dealing so much skill damage in general. But I would always want to have Nico as my primary so I can make use of his defense break before Canara launches her 1.4k skill damage nuke, and as well as cycle the defense break more in a better fashion, pretty much. Next up, we got in this, not really recommended as a primary, even though, you know, she has a really solid skill. Both her trees are really punishing if you go for her primary, so I wouldn't really recommend you build her primary at all. Even though if you have her awakened, you can make use of the infirm when she is your primary. Though for some reason it's not working the awakened in Roots of War. Farlight fix, please. But then we got ourselves the Big Mommy Madeline that has sadly fallen out of flavor this season comparison to Gores and Skolle. But though that doesn't mean Madeline is by all means bad or anything, she's still one of the strongest commanders in the game and one of the best infantry ones that you could have. But sadly, she has fallen victim to Goresh and Skogul's rampage and how OP they are with the new talents. But for her build, she hasn't really changed at all. She still synergizes perfectly with Garwood and still a good meat shield to be running around. And you can even have that meat shield just run around and deal counterattack damage with with that infantry skill. If you are an infantry main, then you will be eating good this season, especially with the Spiritborn Toric and Greymore's Hammer as engagement tools to CC and stunlock people. Next up, we got Husk. Husk is probably gonna fall out of flavor massively this season, especially because of the presence of the long range warfare talent, and you're not really going to be building around counterattack anymore, I believe. But if you are, his talent tree has not really changed. You still go for the very standard counterattack build that hasn't really changed since the introduction of that build. But up we got Bakshi. Bakshi, nothing's changed. He's still the same tree, and he's still equally worthless this season. Same for Emrys, just farm killers or raiders or whatever. This is the Sonic build if you want to go fast, pretty much, and just be annoying in general to deal with. You get so much march speed from this talent tree, and you can just go zoom, 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 zoom. Next up, we got Garwood. Pretty worthless as a primary. Um, doesn't really have any good talent trees that justify him being primary, and his kit doesn't really reward you for being primary. If anything, he should always be kept as secondary in order to keep healing when you take more damage overall. You just heal more in general. Nika, don't use. She's pretty trash. Rondo, pretty strong. You still go for the control tree and PvP tree, but you should probably go with him as a flying march more than a ground march, because when you go flying with him, you're going to be dealing a whole lot more damage and you're going to be able to utilize his mobility and his damage overall to get into the backline quicker and not be shut down and get blown up immediately the moment someone sees you out on the field. Theodore, not really recommended much out in the open field, but if you want to use him, then by all means use him as a garrison. He's still going to be a really good garrison commander in general, though Goresh and Skogul will probably crack him open and crack his skull in, that little skull that looks like something that I sadly can't say on the video, but you get my point. Next up, we got Tohar, the cow that has been on everyone's minds lately. I believe Tohar should always be the primary in any march he's present in. And the reason for that is because, well, his talent or rather his passive skill, locks people from launching their rage skills. So if you have him as your primary, that solves that issue, as well as helps you pick up the buffs, especially if you're going to be running him as a pairing with Bertrand, then he should always be the primary in that march. And the talent I would go for, if I'm going to be running him out in the open field, would be this talent tree right here. But here's the thing, Tohar should not be used in the open field. I'm a firm believer that he's not an open field commander and should be treated as a last resort open field option, though I have been proven wrong multiple times, even though I'm never wrong about my predictions on commanders. So I'm still gonna be holding my final verdict on him till I see him out in the open field. But for now, just doesn't feel like he's meant for the open field, as he punishes people for moving when you should always be moving out in the open field. So it kind of makes no sense that the moment you move and reposition, you lose out on a lot of your DPS and you lose out on your awakening if you don't finish channeling all 5 stacks of his poop that he throws on people. Of course, if you want to go for him as your garrison, then by all means, though not really recommended. He will get shredded by Syndron Fragar in any garrison passes he defends. Mages are not meant for garrisoning, their base stats are awful, and they're not meant to be under attack. So I don't know what the direction of Tohar is supposed to be, but I'll just keep him on the shelf for now, but these are the two talent trees, the one for Garrison and one for the open field. Pan should not be used. Guanwen should not be used as a primary anymore. She's kind of dead in the water, but if you do use her as a primary, then just copy Nico's tree that we posted earlier in the video. Alistar keep in the trash. Eliana keep in the trash. Atheist, you just run him as a secondary now to Bertrand, or him primary and Bertrand secondary, though he has the magic and PvP tree, so you might as well just go for this build instead if you want to run her as a serious contender for doing damage overall out in the field. Alwyn should always be your secondary. There's no point of running him primary anymore. Waldir the same. He gets pretty much the same as Lilia treatment, pretty much. If you're gonna be running him with any other DPS damage dealer, then go for this. If you're gonna be running him with uh, what do you call it, Valen, then you should go for energy boost instead of magic maelstrom because you already have defense break built in inside of Valen's kit. Bakar in the trash he goes. Craig, same as Fragar. I don't really know what to build on him anymore, to be honest. Mobility tree is awful, and the marksman tree is awful, and he has engineering, so just build whatever you see fit on him, to be honest. I don't really have any recommendations on him. Chakcha is OP. I'm gonna keep his tree hidden. I don't want people to use him out on the field. Kella is Kella, and Ordo is well engineering, so you might as well just go for the standard engineering tree and just demolish people or demolish buildings left and right. Whew, that was a long ramble about commander talents. But anyway, what do you guys think about all these talents? Do you like it? Do you don't like it? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below or join the Discord. Let's have a discussion. The link is in the description. But on that note, thank you so much for watching. Whew, I'm a bit out of breath here. Damn. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe. And have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Meow meow.